Inside a cathedral in Krakow, there are actual dragon bones on display, or so the legend goes.
And it also turns out the Historic Center is so impressive that it was one of the very first World Heritage Sites back in 1978.
Get ready for legends, dark history, and essential travel tips. Let's go to this golden city right after the intro. Welcome to World Heritage Rookies, the podcast where we explore UNESCO World Heritage Sites one episode at a time. We are Lina
and Ralf, and we will travel alongside you to some of the most stunning sites our world has to offer.
Each week, we dive into the history, fun facts, and reasons why World Heritage Sites matter for humanity, sharing our own discoveries and travel tips along the way.
So, let's dive in and learn about some World Heritage together. Welcome everybody to episode 10 of World Heritage Rookies. If it's the first time you're listening to us, a very warm welcome. This is a podcast where we talk about World Heritage sites. And we're your hosts. My name is Ralf.
And my name is Lina. And if you are coming back from one of our earliest episodes, welcome back. That means that we are not only being entertaining, but also I hope, informative.
I hope we're both entertaining and informative, or at least one of them, yes.
So today's episode, it's on me. It's about the city of Krakow, the second largest and oldest city in Poland. So quite exciting episode, I'm pretty sure. Anything else before we start?
Only that I'm very looking forward to it. Sitting here with a nice cup of tea and then just curious about learning what, for example, I did not know that is the second oldest city in Poland. So I already learned something just from the introduction you provided.
Ta-da! No, but yeah, of course. And there is going to be a lot of information in this episode. So probably it's going to be one of the largest. I hope no. But if it is, I'm sorry if it's too long.
I don't think you have to apologize for this. I have the feeling that I have a tendency to make our episodes anyway longer because I talk a lot. So it's only fair if you also have a longer episode than actually.
Yeah, at least one longest episode. But yes, my husband talks a lot. So I also apologize for that in advance.
Hey, we just said before, if people are coming back, it cannot be that bad. If you're all just new listeners, then we know it might be because I'm talking too much. But if you're coming back, thank you.
Exactly. So as always, before starting, Ralf, do you know anything about Krakow?
I know a few things about Krakow, but for sure not going into details. So I know obviously it is until today one of the most important cities you have in Poland. I know it is by many considered one of the most beautiful cities in Poland because of all of its historical aspects in it. I know that it is also quite close to some other World Heritage sites. So we talked, for example, about the Royal Salt Mines, which I think are not that far away from Krakow. And yeah, I know it has been really relevant throughout all of its history for Poland. And that's why I assume there is going to be a huge amount of information you will be able to share today, right?
Well, I hope, it is not the full information. So we always try to give this recommendation that is certain batch in our research. So always take everything with a salt of grain and do your own research, especially when you're visiting. But yeah, indeed. So exactly, I'm just adventuring on it. The city of Krakow dates all the way back to the 7th century. Nevertheless, they are already knowing of a settlement in these lands from the 4th century. Actually, the first historical record where Krakow actually appears, it's in a travel blog from 966 common area. So 1,100 years ago. Shortly after the first records of the city itself appear, it was known that it was incorporated into the Piast Dynasty, who was an empire that was taken from the Bohemians. A little bit of information about the Piast. So the House of Piast was the first historical ruling dynasty of Poland, and they ruled from around 960 until 1370. And unfortunately, they lost their power after the death of King Casimir III the Great.
Do you know if this house or like this family is still around? Did you encounter anything during your research for this topic?
This was one of the big questions I couldn't find in other sources apart of Wikipedia, though the Piast dynasty was actually well known. They had a really big territory.
It's very interesting, like in modern times, sometimes to recreate the steps that royalty or nobility took and how it changed over the times. That's the reason why I'm asking, because I find it very often fascinating. Where are the powers of previous times now? Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that, for instance, you may be more aware of it, but there are a lot of royal families here also in Bavaria that come from the dynasties of the Bavarian Empire.
There are a lot of successors, or like the families of the Bavarian kings are still around. So this is then where I think also this like I mentioned, awareness might sometimes peak in.
Yeah, for sure. So the Piast family still lives as a family, normal and usual family in Poland. But yeah, they definitely not in power or known as royalty anymore. For centuries, coming back a little bit to the topic, Krakow reigned supreme, and it was the capital of the whole Poland from 1038 to 1596. This, of course, marked the city as the gold city, let's say, especially during the Renaissance, when a lot of influence from Italy arrived in the 15th century and make the city prettier than it was even before. The city is so pretty, actually, that the famous astronomer Nicholas Copernicus even studied in Krakow University. Krakow University was founded in 1364 and by Casimir III the Great, the one that I mentioned before, and is today the second oldest university in the whole Central Europe after Charles University in Prague.
Oh, really? I did not know that Prague has the oldest university in Europe.
Exactly. So it is the oldest university. So if you ever visit Prague, you have to go also to the university. It's also really pretty. I don't know if you have visited, but it's beautiful. Being a capital city, the city grew under the dynasty, and it was the capital of the Kingdom of Poland, and it attracted many markets, many different guilds, including business guilds, science and art guilds, making it one of the most powerful cities of the whole Europe between or around the 15th century. Of course, and it is true for everything, not everything shines forever. And unfortunately, Krakow suffered a major setback when the King Sigmund III moved the government from Krakow to Warsaw in 1596.
Do you know by chance what the reason was for moving the capital? Is this mentioned somewhere?
Actually, no, I am not really sure, but it is true. When I was doing the research, King Sigmund III is not well known to be one of the best kings. So sometimes, and I think that this could be the situation, though I'm not really sure, is that, these kings are like, I'm tired of Krakow, let's move it to somewhere else. So it was not really an economical or like a political or maybe a society-driven decision. It was more like one of the ideas of the king.
I think that's something perhaps like in the afterwards we can try to find out, put in our companion post that we will put on our Instagram for this episode at World Heritage Rookies.
The confirmation. Though I did try to research about it because I knew this was going to be one of your questions, but I didn't find a resolute solution. So we will try to actually check once again to see if I found the reason why Sigmund III decided to move the capital from Krakow to Warsaw.
Yeah, but I think it's a common theme that we see, especially when you talk about the importance of cities. I mean, we had this in previous episodes when we were talking in our second episode about the city of Quito, like how its importance rose because at that time the Incan rulers really appreciated, or when we were talking about Aachen Cathedral and how we see how the fate of Aachen really was connected to Charlemagne, and here's the opposite in a way. So like Krakow lost a bit of its importance and power because the decision of the rulers. So common theme throughout the history of a lot of cities.
And actually, when you say that this really impacted negatively, that was actually true, because afterwards the city was left without its major protection. Of course, with the king, it moves the army and so on. So unfortunately, the decline fastened a lot by several wars, including the besiege and capture of the city by the Swedish invasion in 1655. So, of course, it made it more susceptible to these kind of attacks.
1655, so this was then really in the context shortly after the...
Like 60 years after the king moved the capital.
And it was in the context then of the 30 Years' Wars, I assume,
Exactly.
Which then quickly after that, yeah.
Well, the city still survived and eventually became caught up in the partitions of Poland in the late 18th century, falling under Austrian rule and the Habsburg Empire, as we know. This partitioning happened all around Europe, and especially Central Europe, including Austria, Germany, Poland, and the Hungarian Empire. Then in 1802, German became the town's official language, and it took over, of course, most of the culture of the Austrians and the Habsburgs Empire. So by this time, especially the cultural revolution of the Habsburg ways of living really became well known in the city. After that, of course, we all know by history, it came the Napoleonic Wars. And of course, Napoleon failed. We all know the history. And in 1815, the Congress of Vienna restored the pre-war boundaries of the city, and it created the partially independent and neutral free city of Krakow. So basically what happened is that after the Napoleon left, and the political decision of how everything was politically being structured, give them a lot. Krakow got a lot of recognition as a city, and they basically became an independent city in the whole Europe.
That's also definitely an achievement, because this is just given to places that are significant by themselves enough that they can stand out. So this is showcasing what important status Krakow held throughout its whole history within Europe to be recognized as an independent or free city.
Exactly. And I think that it's really interesting to see what other cities in the Congress of Vienna got this recognition, but definitely helped Krakow to boom, let's say. Then from this point on, Krakow became known as the Polish Athens, or the Polish Mecca, which was a crucial center of Polish culture, art, and national Polish symbolism. So it became the cultural city of Poland. Sadly, of course, this is when the hiccup comes. This 20th century came, and with it, immense hardship. We all know the Nazi German forces entered Krakow in September 1939, and the city became the capital of the general government of the Nazi government in Poland under Hans Frank. During this time, the occupation took a heavy toll on the cultural heritage, and in an infamous act called the Sonderaktion Krakow, in Krakow in 1939, 184 professors and academics were arrested and sent to the concentration camps of Sachsenhausen and Dachau. Sorry, my German is actually could be better.
Well, no, the pronunciation were, in my opinion, pretty well, but yeah,
Judge me correctly.
Sachsenhausen and Dachau actually were some of the earliest concentration camps. So obviously, because of the atrocities that were committed there in such huge numbers, Auschwitz is by today far more well known. But I think it's also here important to know, like, there were obviously concentration camps before Auschwitz, and Sachsenhausen,
like
Dachau
the
were
experimentation,
the
concentration
sort of,
camps.
the earliest ones.
So a lot of people doesn't know, but before the formation of the ghettos, and Krakow had one of the biggest ghettos in the whole Europe, the district actually motivated Jews to leave the city early on in the war. So as soon as the Nazi entered the city, a lot of the national government encouraged Jews to leave as soon as possible. Unfortunately, we all know, but by 1941, the Jewish population was moved to Krakow's ghetto and later murdered in the major concentration camps around the city, like Plaslow and Auschwitz, which we all know it's really, really close by. Well, we all know, of course, that the war finished, and despite the darkness, Krakow rebound, and in 1978, the city's archbishop, I'm sorry for my English once again, Karol Wojtyla became the Pope, known as Pope John Paul II.
I did not know he was from Krakow, I have to admit. I mean, I obviously knew he was Polish,
Krakow,
but I did not know he was from Krakow.
And he was also the first non-Italian Pope in 455 years.
Italian Pope?
Yes, he was the only non-Italian Pope.
A non-Italian, okay, sorry.
After 455 years. And basically that is the finalization of the whole story. Today, Krakow stands proud, and its population is 4 times more than before World War II. So it has been growing immensely, and I will give you a little bit more of details about that growth in the 21st century. But that's basically the historical part of the city of Krakow.
A lot of different influence factors over the years. So having survived is perhaps the wrong term, apart from obviously some of the darker areas, but having witnessed so many changes in governments, ruling parties, and influences, and then actually having survived such an atrocity as the invasion of the Nazis in the 20th century, and being now still considered, I think it's still considered one of the not just prettiest cities of Poland, but I hear a lot of people say they consider Krakow one of the prettiest and most impressive cities within all of Europe. This is, as you said, a really great example of coming back after such hardship.
I mean, I saying it in the last episode, we were talking about the soil mines of Bieliczka. I do agree that Krakow, it totally impressed me. It's so beautiful. It's a really pretty city, and I also think that it had a little bit of luck through years, because we know many cities disappeared to the ground through wars, through the whole conflicts of medieval Europe, but Krakow stands until today, proud, as I mentioned it. So quite interesting feat. Some fun facts about Krakow. Of course, it was from the Middle Ages a powerhouse of commerce. Krakow's economic strength was just not about only the location, but during the 15th century, which I mentioned before was known as the Golden Age, the Krakow whole was a major international trade center. It imported exotic goods coming from Asia, like spices, silk, leather, and works, while also exporting some local customs, like, for instance, textiles, lead, salt from the nearby salt mines, and other products from the local area. And today is actually a really still powerhouse of economical importance. So Krakow is also today one of the major cities in IT cities or IT offshorings, hosting centers of major multinational companies like IBM, General Electric, Motorola, and the Sabre Holdings. So hanging from the Sigmund Tower of Wawel Cathedral, the Royal Sigmund Bell cast in 1520, is the heaviest well with nearly 13 tons or about 28,000 pounds. It requires 12 people to actually make it sound, and its sound is strictly reserved for special occasions like national holidays or the election of a new pope. That's the only times you can actually hear their noise.
The election of a new pope in general, or like an election of a pope who is from Poland?
No, I think that is a general, any pope, any new pope, they will sound the bell.
So it's a Catholic church then, for sure.
For sure. I mean, Krakow is Catholic. I mean, we're talking about Central Europe still, and it's not only Catholic, it's Roman Catholic. It is also known as the Polish Louvre. So the Wawel Royal Castle is actually today an art museum, and it's not only a royal home today, but it hosts every year, or last year, for instance, it hosts 3.1 million visitors, and it makes it the most visited art museum in the whole century, and the 17th most visited art museum in the whole world. So it is huge, and it is really important in Krakow.
It's also interesting because I have the feeling when you talk about huge art museum, you would not typically think about Krakow when you ask, like I don't know, on the street, what is the most visited art museum? Like, a lot of people will then obviously name the Louvre, but I do not think a lot of people will have Krakow on mind.
Probably no, but it's also really important that we remind that they were part of the Habsburg Empire, and we know that Austrians tend to actually collect art and different kinds of specific art, not only just paint art, but also sculptures and so on. And they were here, and of course, they left a lot of things. So please have in mind, this is just a little bit of hiccup before we go into the travel part, you need to go to the National Museum of Art of the Wawel Royal Castle.
I assume there are also still a lot of other cool museums in Krakow.
Oh, for sure.
From the description, it sounds like it's a city with a majority of cool museums to visit.
It is true. And I will mention some of them afterwards for sure. As a last interesting fact, of course, there is a lot of movies surrounding the Jewish ghetto of Krakow. Some of them portrayed, for instance, in the famous film of Schindler's List. But something interesting I found as well is that the film director Roman Polanski actually survived the Krakow ghetto. So he is one of the survivors and became a director. How cool.
Very famous director also, yes.
Yes. So that's from the fun facts. Now we go some interesting stories of the city of Krakow. Krakow, it's of course a really old city, as I mentioned at the beginning, and there is a lot of buried stories in its streets, and some of them are really well known, even in the historical part of the city. One of them is the Wawel dragon. The name in Polish is Smok Babelski, but I'm really sorry if I mispronounced it. Well, the city, it has a mythical founder called Krakus. The legend says Krakus built the town above a cape occupied by a terrible dragon, the Smok Babelski dragon. Many knights tried unsuccessfully to defeat this dragon by force. But of course, the clever Krakus tried another method. He chose brains over strength. He fed the dragon a poison lamp, which of course ultimately killed the monster without using force. To this day, the legend is commemorated in the lower slopes of the Wawel Hill by the river, where you can see a modern fire-breathing metal statue of a dragon in front of the cave known as the Dragon's Den. So this is still a place that exists in between the city.
So the founder, or the legendary founder of the city, was a dragon slayer.
Exactly. Well, not a dragon slayer. He never slayed any dragon. He poisoned a dragon.
Well, if it gets the job done, like you said, the outcome is what counts.
So yes, Krakow. I mean, sometimes it is important to choose brains over string and force and brute force.
Yeah, because especially as you described that apparently before everybody who tried to kill the dragon was not really successful.
Exactly. Something really interesting is that inside the Wawel Cathedral, they are actually, you can see dragon bones on display, and they are like, okay, this is the dragon bones of the dragon that Krakow killed.
Oh, okay, now I have a question because last time I checked, dragons were not real. Do we know what kind of bones these then are?
Of course. So I knew this was going to be one of your questions, and I checked, and it's more likely to be mammoth bones.
Oh, really? So
yes.
Okay, because I assume they have to be huge and
And it is interesting, of course, to continue the mystery and the story. There has not been a formal research on these bones because, of course, most people and people in science would be like, no, this is some kind of dinosaur or like mammoth, as it is probably the case.
Or perhaps we just did not yet discover the existence of dragons in the past.
Maybe. I mean,
we never know.
The description of a dragon can be many, so maybe. I mean, we don't know. That's story number 1. And now we go to story number 2, called The Secret History Under the Square. I mean, it is true that under the city or the central city of Krakow, there is an underground. And this underground, it's called the Rindeck Underground. It's an archaeological site 4 meters beneath the famous main market street. You can access today through the High-Tech Museum, which visitors are advised to book tickets in advance. So even if you go to the High-Tech Museum, you have to get the tickets for the underground separately. And there is a occupancy limit, so really recommended to book in advance. And this underground reveals details about of the life of around 700 years ago. Among the excavated medieval underground, you can find merchant stalls, small artifacts like necklaces and knives, and also you can found inside the Museum of the Ground spooky stories about the Polish folklore and Polish dead and so on. The museum showcases the remnants of the population from the 11th century, and also a cemetery feature vampire prevention burials that are original.
Oh, so for my understanding, so it's basically a museum inside a museum, right? Mm-hmm. In a historical excavation site, okay?
Yes.
And okay, ancient vampire, so like actual graves where people took measures to prevent the dead from coming back as vampires?
Exactly. In Polish folklore, vampires were actually believed to rise after death. To prevent this, and to prevent unsuspected vampires come back to life, they were sometimes identified, by the hands, by the witch hands, by red hair, or sometimes they have more teeth than they supposed to. But we all know today that this is just a normal physical condition. They were buried in fetal position, and their hands were tied in their heads, and their heads cut off of their bodies and put in their feet. This was supposed, or the idea was that this slowed them down after reanimation because they couldn't find their head. And these living cemeteries are still showing these kind of burials inside. So it is really an interesting place, and this is one of the you must go to see in Krakow.
I find in general the belief of vampirism and what people in the Middle Ages took as preventive measures to, deceased coming back as undead creatures. That's a super fascinating topic. So I did in the past for one of my projects, I did some research, which was also then coming to the backgrounds about vampirism. And of course, by now, mostly the modern vampires and you associate with mostly also Romania or Transylvania. But I think this is a very important highlight you mentioned there, because the whole belief in undeath or like unholy afterlife, it has been really prevalent in multiple European cultures
Yes.
throughout the centuries. And this is really an emphasis how this has shaped, especially medieval life for a very long time. I think I also remember, I wasn't sure if it was related to vampires or in general, that in some places they would put little bells on the graves in order to make a sound when the suspected, I don't know if it was a vampire or a zombie, but like to warn people around. So I find such anecdotes super cool always.
It is true, and it is really interesting that we can find these remainings today, and we understand now what were the traditions behind their type of burials, because as I mentioned, they were tied up, their heads were cutting off, and they allocate the head somewhere else under, so they could not find it when they raised. So they will come back a little bit later, I guess. They will take more time, let's say to say. But yeah, this is kind of the stories of Krakow. So highly recommend to you to visit this underground museum.
I have to ask, because so far there is no story about the devil trying to help build a church, because I have the feeling that nearly every Catholic or like a very Christian has a story about that.
No, in this one it's about the dragon. Remember that the bones of the dragon are in the main cathedral of the city. Cathedral.
In case anybody is listening from Krakow and you know a story about how the devil might be related to building a church, let us know. This is something that I always am now looking out for when it comes to stories of a special medieval Christian places.
Let us know also in our Instagram account, World Heritage Rookies.
Subtle marketing again, as usual.
So, this is about Krakow, pretty much the history and a little bit of interesting information. Now we go to the next part, and one of the ones that we are always more interested in, and it's why it's an UNESCO World Heritage Site. Krakow's history isn't just, of course, about tourism, but it's also considered an outstanding value for humanity. And in 1978, it became a granted UNESCO World Heritage status. And so, always, Ralf, how many criteria do you think was necessary for the city of Krakow to become a World Heritage Site?
I'm starting to dislike this section because always you are right and I'm wrong. Taking a guess from what you described, I would say it is meeting 3 criteria.
3 criteria, that's wrong.
I should not be surprised anymore, but keeping the traditions of this podcast up.
So it only completes 1, which is criteria number 4, historic example. So the city of Krakow is a standout example of architecture or design from an important period in history, especially the golden age of the 15th century. The UNESCO inscription covers 3 key historical areas that illustrate Krakow's history, especially in the Middle Ages. So the first one is the medieval carteret city of Krakow, which has the largest market square, the Rynek Główny, of Europe. The second one is the Wawel Hill complex, which is the site includes the whole site includes the Wawel Cathedral and the Wawel Royal Castle. Of course, these 2 complexes pretty much are the symbol of Polish statehood and royal Poland Empire. And of course, it is a place that holds a lot of royal coronations and funerals. And of course, it shows what it means to be part of the Polish culture in regards to architectural style. This castle, if you go to visit it, and it's something that also struck me before, has a combination of a medieval style. Also, it comes with a Renaissance. I cannot say that word.
It's a difficult Renaissance.
Renaissance structure and architectural.
It's like, you know why it's a difficult word for us? It's French.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to the French people. And it also has Baroque structures. So it is a mix. And when you see in it, you will see the mix really clearly based, because it is a castle that was, of course, as many other castles, put together through time and expanded through time. So in a new era, it came a new art style, and with it, a new architectural building. And finally, the last place that confirms the UNESCO World Heritage Site is the town of Kazimierz. It's the former medieval town, which now comprises many of the Jewish memorial sites, and also reflecting how the Catholic and the Jewish lived through the medieval times. Also, not completely directly included in the World Heritage Site, but part of it, it's the Romanesque St. Andrew's Church, the Gothic St. Mary's Basilica, and the Renaissance Wawel Castle, and its specific chapel, Sigmund Chapel. Of course, there is also one that is Baroque, which is St. Anne Church. So that's why it's a World Heritage Site.
A lot of churches also to visit.
Yes, and I'm sorry again if I mispronounce them, some of them, and the art styles that correspond to them. So that's it. What do you think? Do you think I found it really striking that it was just one, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it always depends a little bit on how you define the criteria. You can always try to make similar topics stand for multiple criteria, but I have also found that just the number of criteria does not necessarily indicate how impressive or important something is. Obviously, you could assume more criteria also make something more impressive, but I think this is also something important to notice. UNESCO doesn't by itself say, okay, one World Heritage Site is better, in quotation marks, than any other, depending on a criteria that it's meeting. So it is surprising, considering what you mentioned about the historical importance of Krakow, but I don't think it takes anything from, this said importance and the beauty of the town.
Yeah, 100%. It's just that, there is also a lot of architectural difference, specificities on the city. So I thought that maybe criteria 3 will also be fitting to the city. So basically that's why it's a World Heritage Site. It has never been actually in danger because it's a really well protected zone. It is one of the most visited places in the whole Poland, so we can just imagine how much is invested every year in actually its preservation. So it has a really good status. It's a city in itself, so actually holding many travelers is not a problem since the very beginning, even before it was considered an UNESCO World Heritage Site. So
I think you describe here it has luck is perhaps the wrong term, but it has the privilege at the moment that it is both economically well off, because as you mentioned, it is now home to a lot of technological and development companies. So this brings business and will make sure that the city has money, and at the same time, it's an historical importance ensuring tourism. So this is, in my opinion, a very good combination that places like this have to ensure that they are preserved over time, because at the same time it is fit for modern challenges and it's creating work and it's creating business, but you also have a real incentive and the money to preserve your historical status.
Also, let's not forget that the World Heritage Site, it's the center of Krakow, so it's not all Krakow. So of course, you living out of, or you staying out of the center, you will see a more modern city, but the preservation of the historical center is well done, and you will not see something that it's like a huge building in the middle of the center of the city. Probably never. So this is something I really appreciate, especially for the governments that take these decisions to actually focus on preservation. So that's it. So now we go to the part where if you want to visit, what to do. So of course, let's go. So for Krakow, as any other European city, let me tell you, you need to walk. And this is sometimes shocking for people, which I don't understand why. But if you come to Europe, you don't come to Europe to move in car and in like public transportation. Like you go to walk, because especially in the centers of the medieval European cities, this is the charm of it. And the historic center of Krakow, it's not different to that. It's actually really easily explored by foot. You can hit all the highlights, including the St. Mary's Basilica or the Hall, the Wawel complex, between walking distance. So it is really normal that people recommend to you to stay close to the center or in the center. Actually, this is probably the only thing that I didn't like when I visited to Krakow. I stay in a hostel that was pretty much like one street from the main square, but it was not the best hostel. I don't remember his name. I don't think it exists anymore. But I mean, stay in the center, just do more research than what I did. Get a high for an amazing view. So it is really recommended by a lot of blog travelers that you need to see the panoramic views. And for that, there is some options. One of them is to climb the town hall tower, or alternatively also the Wawel Hill. This is option 1 and 2. And if you want to do a little bit more work, you can also climb the Sandomierska Tower, which only costs 4 zloty and requires around 137 steps. This is a 3 recommendations to actually see the city from up there, which is really highly recommended because it's a really pretty city from the top. Also, explore the Kazimierz, the historic Jewish quarter, which is called Kazimierz. I'm sorry if I mispronounced it again. It's a highly recommended place, and you must doing it through your staying in Krakow. It has a really unique ambience. They have one of the best food places in the whole city, and it has like a really good nightlife. So now it's more a cultural kind of part of the city. Of course, in the city of Krakow, you can also find modern shopping malls, but actually the zone of Kazimierz have one of the most specialty squares when you can actually find more local foods and also see a little bit more of a typical town of the medieval ages. As I mentioned before, you need to book the underground museum and of Rynek Underground. There is a lot of options to buy tickets, but as I mentioned before, there is a limited number of visitors per day. So it is especially recommended to book the tickets online. You can do it through the Polish site visitkrakow.pl or directly in the museum website. Again, it's called the Rynek Underground Museum.
Remind me then afterwards that I actually might, if there is a direct link to the booking on a website, I could also put this in the show notes so that perhaps our listeners can make it easier. Yeah, then I will put it afterwards in there.
So yes, it's recommended. I didn't find exactly how before, but I would not expect it to be more than 3 months. So maybe 1 month before your arrival, try to get these tickets.
That's also something you learn when you want to visit certain World Heritage Sites of parts. You would be surprised how many of them really take extensive pre-booking in time. So that's a very good recommendation to keep in mind, in my opinion. Yeah, definitely.
And also, I mean, in terms of time, I'm coming from a person that already visited Krakow and enjoy the hell out of it. I will say
I love it. It's a scientific description. How much, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you rate Krakow? I enjoyed the hell out of it.
It was amazing, to be honest. And I would say that 3 to 4 days, 2 to 4 days is a really good amount of time to visit the whole historical parts, enjoy the food, have a really nice drink, maybe go in the night to dance. The hill, especially at night, there is in the time I went, probably has changed. So since then, you can really go to an open bar in the night, have really nice music, and the living night of Krakow is really interesting. So please enjoy it. It's a really safe city. So you have absolutely no problem to stroll in the night or visit some of the local bars.
Since I again have to admit that I have not been, so Poland is from my side, at least unfortunately, very under-traveled. What was your favorite part of visiting Krakow from all of the things that you described? What do you think you enjoyed the most?
It's really hard to say, but definitely the historical center. The stroll during the day of the historical center, I did some tours, some of these free guide tours, which I also recommend because they gives you a really good insight into the city and the historical part of the city. I think that was really adorable. And it is really nice to, going through the buildings and seeing from the changes in architectural styles. So you go now you go to a Gothic cathedral, and after that you are in a Renaissance-driven cathedral. And it is really shocking how close they are one to each other and how many styles and architectural changes you can find between one or two streets. So that's definitely a must. Now, this is the thing that I like it the most.
So it was not one particular building or one particular site. It was the whole ensemble and the experience of the historical city.
The Bubble. If we're talking about one specific place, the Bubble Castle, it's absolutely beautiful. And it is, I have so many photos from it. And I think that I probably overdid it a little bit, but it was really nice.
I think this is one of the pictures we have on our pin wall, right? Of the memory pictures. This is like you sitting in front of the castle. This is this place?
Yes, that's the castle.
That is also a really adorable picture. Yeah, so it was just a perfect combination, I assume, right?
Hint to the husband comment.
I'm not forced to say this. Like I'm doing this out of my own volition and because I love my wife really a lot, and not because I'm forced to say this.
Please do a signal if you need to be saved.
Okay, that's really helpful in a podcast, right? When nobody can see it.
like a safe word, maybe. But of course, you need to also plan in advance other kind of things that you can do around Krakow. Most of the people visit Krakow because what it is around, and you have to not forget about it. Krakow, of course, has a lot of World Heritage sites around. We know about the salt mines. We already talked about them. So they are around 50 kilometers away from the city and really easily reached by bus and train.
So if you want to hear more information specifically about the salt mines, so Lina also has visited them and we have covered them in one of the previous episodes. I have to admit, I do not know by heart now which number it has been, but you can find obviously in our overview there.
I can tell you it's episode... Oh God!
You see, you cannot
6.
tell us here. But I'm struggling so far. So there's also like with past episodes to keep track of it. But yeah, if you want to learn more about the salt mines and their history, Lina has covered it also extensively and shared her own travel experiences.
We probably will also link the episode down below. So just check it out for the moment that we are talking about this.
Again, trying to cover with previous episodes. All right, so the salt mines and what else?
Of course, I mean, most of the people visits Krakow or stays in Krakow to visit Auschwitz and Birkenau. Concentration camps, they are around 7 kilometers away, and it is really easily accessible by train or also by bus. I visited with a private tour, so I can also recommend that. It was not a private tour, it was a group tour where they drive us there with a bus and give us lunch. So it was really easily to plan that as well. So if you want to do it, that requires 1 day, a full day. So the salt mines require 1 day. The Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camps requires minimum 1 day. Auschwitz is really big, but normally you always go first to Birkenau, which is the historical museum part, let's say now, and then you go to Auschwitz in the afternoon. They are a little bit far away, so normally what tours, and that's happened to me, you go to Birkenau, you go visit the museum part, and then you have a little bit of a stop for lunch, and then you continue to Auschwitz. Of course, if you're doing privately, you can also doing it the other way around to avoid crowds.
Yeah, I think we will probably go into more details about this in a future episode, because as Auschwitz-Birkenau is, it's also a World Heritage Site. This is for sure also we're gonna cover it in one episode in the future.
more specifications on how to reach. And finally, you can also visit the, oh my goodness, the name is a little bit hard. Kalvaria Sebrystowska, which is an important pilgrim park, which is about 40 kilometers south of the city, and is well visited by a lot of Catholic communities. So yeah, there you have it. A taste of history, a taste of like legends, vampires, dragons, and all that comprise the city of Krakow. It is a Central European marvel, and you need to visit it. And I think that you need the message from also the episode of the Soul Mines, and now is that you need to visit Poland. It's an amazing place. It is unbelievable. Look aside for many visitors and tourists, but I love Poland and I can visit every time.
I have the feeling that it has gained in the past years a lot more recognition as a place to visit compared towards the more, I would say, traditional places you want to visit in Europe. And I think this is really cool because, as you mentioned, it has been for a very long time sort of underappreciated. I do not know what it tells about me that like probably the thing that I'm most excited to go to is to the Dragon's Bones right now. So like the first thing is I was like, I want to see those dragon bones right now. What does it tell about me?
I do find Krakow so interesting. And of course, in the future, we also probably... But Warsaw, it's also a World Heritage Site.
Yes, it is, yeah.
So we will do the contrast because it is a really different city. It has a completely different architectural style and like and historical part. So it was quite shocking also going, because I went from Krakow to Warsaw after like 1 or 2 stops, and it is a completely different environment. And I found that so interesting in the same country, having a country with such 2 different major cities.
Yeah, that's what I heard from many people also, that they were fascinated about the contrast between those 2 major cities. But I'm very curious about visiting both. So I'm also very looking forward to the future episode for Warsaw to learn about it more. But yeah, I think I will have to be a bit patient until then. Until then, yeah. So the next episode is not gonna be Warsaw. I can already sort of spoil, because next time it will be again my turn. I will return with you all again to Africa to talk about a World Heritage Site that is, I think, the first World Heritage Site that we're going to talk about that is celebrating sort of one of the horrible things. Well, celebrating is the wrong term, but is remembering one of the horrible things of human history. So I think it will be a very interesting episode also to listen to and learn that World Heritage Site might not just be about celebrating the beauty, but also remembering the hardships, the sadness,
So until then,
thank you everyone. Take care.
Thank you so much.
And bye-bye.
Goodbye.